we're going to have Kentris Rush, Digital Media Manager at Jackson State University, join us. We're also going to have Karina Petrillo, Social Engagement Manager at Hulu. And we're going to have Daryl Heiberger, the Social Media Brand Content and Partnerships Manager at Judy. Hi, friends.
Hi.
How are y'all doing?
Hello.
Good, doing good.
Great to see you all. Okay, well, I want to just jump in and get started and chat with you in the short amount of time we have. A jam-packed day, so I just want to ask some questions and chat social with y'all. So to get to know each of you a little bit more, I wanted to do some intros, introduce yourself, and maybe share how you got started in the world of social media. So let's start with you, Kentris.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Kentris Rush, Digital Media Manager at Jackson State University. I started on the personal side on social media with MySpace. That was the first platform that I joined. And in undergrad at Jackson State, I joined Facebook. It was really because an organization that I was in required that we join Facebook, because that's how we would talk about meetings and other discussions would happen in the Facebook group. So I joined Facebook and really got into how great of a tool it could be. I was a marketing major, and so I saw how great it could be, not only to connect with classmates and family members, but also to promote things. So professionally, I started with BET. I interned with BET for 2 years as a college marketing rep. And in that college marketing rep program, we promoted BET programming on our campuses. So through posting posters, having events, and also on social media. We had digital campaigns where we had to promote programming, and those campaigns were attached to contests, and I was able to win contests with digital media campaigns. And so that really got me started. Thank you. That really got me started. And I also managed the social media accounts of different campus organizations that I was in. So that got me started with really focusing on how to communicate as another entity, a group, instead of just myself. Going on to grad school in Atlanta, I interned with Adult Swim on their marketing team, and part of my job was to update the Facebook page, which had over 3 million followers. Big deal for me at the time. And so updating the page to talk about programming and getting more experience. And I also managed some more social media accounts with different organizations in grad school. I've been at Jackson State since 2015, started as social media associate, and our area changed to digital media to be more encompassing of what we work on. We work with apps and websites as well as social media. And I'm the digital media manager. I've been in this particular role for 3 years, and at Jackson State for a little over 6 years. So that's my journey.
Very cool. And you had the first lady on your campus yesterday, didn't you?
The day before yesterday, I think.
What are days?
The day before. What are days? What are days?
Well, starting with MySpace, starting on MySpace is pretty special too. That's interesting. A true throwback.
Yes.
I'll come back to you, Kentris, in just a moment, but I want to move on to Karina. Hi, Karina. How are you?
Hi, doing good. How are you?
Good. Tell us about your origin story in social media.
Sure. So I started out as a longtime intern at Viacom Media Networks, now Viacom CBS, for those following along with merger news. And I got my first internship ever at Nickelodeon on their creative resources team. So I was essentially doing a job that I didn't know existed. I was writing creative copy for the backs of DVDs, for log lines, for t-shirts. And I realized, as a journalism major who did not want to write for a newspaper, I could still use my creative writing skill set in a pretty unique way. So I was there for a few semesters, and then I really wanted to stay with the Viacom family, and I was lucky enough to get an internship at corporate Viacom Social to really, as an editorial intern, I was writing articles for their B2B platform, which no longer exists. But I started dabbling a little bit in the world of social when we were going through this big rebrand. And, they looked at me, they're like, hey, you're the youngest person in the room. Do you want to give this social thing a try? So I learned all about the ins and outs of working with an agency, building content calendars, community management, and KPIs, all these words that I was Googling at first to really figure out what the heck does this mean? So I found myself having a knack for the world of social, and I stayed in this internship role for 3 semesters. It led me all the way to my college graduation, and I just kept growing and growing and learning. I realized when I graduated, I really want to continue to work in social. So I applied for so many social coordinator roles, interviewed all over God's green earth. And I ended up at MTV, very fortunate, my dream job. I was a social coordinator for them for 3 years. I started running the MTV Facebook page, which then snowballed to running the MTV TikTok at the time. When that came on the scene in October of 2018, we all said, what is this crazy app? How do we navigate this? So that was wonderful to really be able to spearhead our voice and our presence and learn what it's like to build a community on that platform. And then from there, I bounced over to run MTV's Twitter account, and I did that for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And that was a wonderful, crazy whirlwind of an experience, just tweeting whatever came off the top of my head, drafting my own content calendars, creating my own memes in Photoshop, and really diving into the world of community management and forming personal relationships with our fans and our community, and constantly being plugged in. That was a wonderful experience. And then this past January, I got reached out to by Hulu to pursue a social engagement manager role here on their team. So currently I'm overseeing all of the @Hulu social handles. I am collaborating with a lot of my teammates to spearhead our cultural campaigns, what that looks like on our presence across social. And I'm a woman of a lot of hats. I love my job here. So I've been here since April. So I'm still kind of new, still learning the ropes, but I've had the chance to work on some fantastic campaigns that I'm really excited to share with you all today. And that's my journey thus far.
Thus far. Awesome.
Yes. A lot more to go.
Well, yes. Well, Daryl, how are you? How did you get started in social?
Yeah, I had absolutely no intention of being in social media. I was a studio art major in college, but knew I didn't want to do anything related to graphic design or anything like that. So naturally, I interned at a few small startups, doing a lot of like content development and just doing photo shoots, things like that. And I loved that kind of like quote unquote branding side, which I had no clue what that actually was when I was a child. But I got really lucky, and right out of college wound up responding to a Facebook post from a college alumni working at that agency for 3 years with Mr. Jeremy over here. And it was a real nosedive into all things social. We were a very small agency with very limited resources in terms of, small fish clients. So it was a lot of nitty gritty learning on the fly, Googling keywords, Googling what KPI meant, like things like that. I can relate. But I think what I loved most about it was working with clients, and it was a lot of copywriting and things like that, things that I had never seen myself doing. But I always knew I wanted to be in-house, and so I was so lucky. And about 6 months ago, I was able to fulfill that dream, and I moved in-house, and I'm now working at a small startup called Duty, and we're an emergency preparedness brand. So that was a big education haul of educating myself on natural disasters and things that you wouldn't normally think about unless you live in specific regions affected. But I'm a one-woman team and doing a lot of brand work plus content creation, copywriting, community management. But it's kind of nice being a one-woman team, I think. It's like it's easier. You're in the thick of everything. But yeah, so that's where I'm at now.
Well, Daryl, being a one-woman team, I want to ask, today's all about collaboration. And so I want to ask each of you how you collaborate internally to get the job done, to make things happen on social. You know, you said you're a one-woman team, but I'm sure there are some folks that you're working with to make magic happen. So tell us about a project you worked on, or something you worked on recently where you really collaborated internally with the folks at Judy.
Yeah, we actually, this is great timing. We just launched our 2 new products last week, and it was something that we were new to the market, and then an extension of one of our original emergency kit SKUs. So it was a lot of, again, learning about different technical terms, things like that. And I think the one thing that our whole team realized was how awesome each of us are at communicating, because when you don't know how to get through it, or you don't know something, you get through the thick of it by just asking questions, getting on the phone. And I think the beauty of Judy, which is the company that I'm at now, is they really set up the small team we have with distinct, I'd say, like verticals. So it's like one person per product development, financial, paid marketing, me on social plus branding, and we have a killer customer service team. Like, they are just beyond. And I think the point of collaborating and the beauty of that is, when you don't know something, have a team that it's okay to ask. And you might feel a little silly and stupid at first, but we all feel that. And I think that's the key lesson.
Sure. I love the beauty of Judy. If you don't already use that, you should.
I'm writing it or post it.
Write it down. Take it, use it for later. Karina, how about you? You said you work with a lot of people. So how do you collaborate internally at Hulu so far?
One of my favorite things so far is that, social teams, we're inherently very tight knit. No matter how big or small you are, everyone has their hands in everything. So for example, I was just currently am leading our Black Music Month campaign for the month of June. So in thinking of ways that we will express this campaign on social, we are involving every other aspect of every Hulu team within the marketing sphere. So we are running our pitches by them, we're running our assets by them, we're contacting ERGs to get different opinions on messaging, and making sure that we are not only aligned as a social team, but aligned as an organization. Hulu in particular, of course, we're a streaming service, so we have a massive on-channel presence. And what we do on channel, meaning when you open up the Hulu app, we visually have to be in line with what we do on social, yes, but in terms of messaging, it's making sure that we are approaching events and particular cultural tentpoles in the same way, so that way, they're going rogue on Twitter talking about XYZ differently than we're expressing, our thoughts on Facebook. So it's very important that we involve every individual across the organization who, like you said, Daryl, you can find out answers to questions just by asking other people who have greater insight into communities, into, I'm sorry, the garbage truck is coming across the street. So people, in your organization have a lot more insight, and not to be afraid to lean into them has been a really wonderful eye-opening experience for me so far at Hulu, that you're not just one social manager in charge of all these platforms. Yes, it feels that way, but ask around, show the concepts you're working on, share the pitch decks you're working on. People have different perspectives in an organization that will open your eyes to really approach things in different manners, in different ways that you might not have considered. So it's very easy to feel like, in a one-woman show, particularly, Daryl, I've been there, totally understand how that feels as well, that, I'm in charge of this, what I say goes, absolutely, but don't be afraid to reach out, branch out, ask those ERGs, and make sure that your voice, you are in charge of the voice, but that voice is collectively everyone. That is the organization's voice.
I
You
love
make a
that.
really good point about perspectives. I actually just recently ran into this, because we're so closely knitted with the customer service team. Like, the way that we would approach something from like a punchy, playful marketing thing, they'll I'll send it to them as an FYI, and they'll flag it and just be like, you do not even know how many people will reach out if you post that. Like either not necessarily a negative comment, but just like asking questions, things that really open up a can of worms for any other department. It's so important to get their input. Like,
I love playing
not
devil's advocate.
later.
I love when other people play devil's advocate. Challenge
Yes.
me. Challenge me on how could someone perceive this post, even if it's something as silly as a misplaced exclamation point. Tell
Oh
me
my
how
God.
this can be
Yeah.
misconstrued. I want to hear that, because part of what we do is, yes, that looks great to me. There's no copy errors. Like, wonderful, send it. But let's talk about tonality. Let's talk about how this is going to be perceived. And if we as one individual can't see that, the more eyes, the better. It takes a village. It takes a village to run a successful social platform. Anyone will tell you that.
It really does.
Preach, preach. Kentris, I want to hear from you. Collaboration at a university is very important and different from these other two examples. So I want to know how you collaborate internally with your team members at Jackson State.
Sure. So I'm in university communications. That's the department we're in, and there are 12 of us, and spread across 4 main areas: public relations, marketing, creative services, and digital media. Within digital media, there's 2 of us. I have an associate director who basically started social media at Jackson State, and he's been serving as our interim executive director the last 6 months. And there's me. I manage pretty much the day-to-day management of our social media platforms: posting, customer service, content creation, and curation. But even though there's only 2 of us in this area of digital media, like it was said, there's a lot of collaboration, and what we post on social media is a collaborative effort. From the stories that we post, a lot of them are created by our public relations team. They craft the stories and they get photos from the photography team, which is within public relations. And also within those stories, it could be some graphics that are created by the creative services team, and usually in collaboration with the marketing team. And they may need some videos or some links to social media posts to help out the story and everything. So a lot can go into just this one story before it's even posted on social media, to let people know what's going on at Jackson State and all of that. And major events, there's a lot of hands and eyes on different projects. Marketing materials, the creative services team could work with marketing team and also include photos from the photography team. There's a lot of collaboration within our area, and a lot of that is posted on our social media platform. So one main person posting, but it's a lot of collaboration to get it posted.
Yeah, I want to jump to another question because we're almost already out of time, if you can believe that. But what I want to ask y'all, another aspect of social media that we touched on that's so important is community and building community online. So I'll start with Kentris and we can snake back around. But in your opinion, what's the best way to build a passionate community on social media? What tactics do you use to grow your following and really have a dedicated group of people following your channels?
All right, we have a great online community, a very passionate, strong online community. And one of the things that has helped really, maintain that community is sharing the good news that we have at Jackson State, sharing the accomplishments, the achievements by students and faculty, staff, alumni. And so when our audience looks at our social media platforms, they see themselves or they see their peers, and they can celebrate what is going on at Jackson State. And so that helps out our core group, our stakeholders, students, faculty, staff, alumni. But in building our community, one thing that has really stood out is how large our following has been. We're one of the largest HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and we're like maybe top 10 within enrollment with HBCUs, but across other universities, we could be considered relatively small. But we've still been able to have a large audience, a large platform because of a lot of the content that we share, and a lot of it is showcasing campus life. A lot of videos, especially, that show what's going on campus. We have a vibrant campus, a vibrant community. And so those videos have been very successful in helping to grow our following. We've had viral moments. One in particular stands out for Facebook, where we recorded the sonic boom of the South Marching Band marching back from an event, and that got 7.7 million views, 7.8, something like that, and over 400,000 reactions, over 150,000 shares, all organic. And
Never underestimate a feel-good moment, like never.
Yes. And so many people have that connection with the Sonic Boom, but so many people, of course, are introduced to Jackson State because of these viral moments, with all the shares and everything. So we see those spikes in our following from those moments. Another one, students singing a Kirk Franklin song on our plaza, which was during homecoming week. It went viral, and even Kirk Franklin saw it. And so we saw spike on Twitter with that. So that has helped to build our following, showing people those moments, but maintaining the following, also making sure that we show that core information, what's going on academically, what are our students doing, what are the outcomes of getting this education. So that's how we've been able to build and maintain our audience.
It's funny and interesting that sharing, I mean, it makes total sense though, that sharing aspects of the community helps build community on social media. So that's really cool. Karina, quickly, what are your tips for building a community on social?
So from the Hulu standpoint, it kind of goes without saying that our community relies in our fan bases. They are the fan bases for the shows, and those within themselves are rabid communities in the best way possible. So, the easy answer is engaging those fan bases and, leaning into content that they want to engage with. And also leaning deeper into that content and finding, someone on our team somewhere who's a super fan of XYZ show who can really talk about the nitty gritty that everyone wants to hear. Those are some easy plays. But when you talk about larger community, I think we also right now, as we're building our social team, are placing a very, very large emphasis on activating communities who usually do not engage with us. So during Pride Month, I'll speak to currently, we have a wonderful collaboration going on right now with Drag Syndrome. For those of you who haven't checked them out, I highly, highly recommend it. They are the world's first drag troupe with Down syndrome. They are currently based in the United Kingdom. So we have a slew of content coming out. We actually are doing a live stream drag brunch with them on our TikTok this weekend. But in terms of activating community, we have posted I think it was the IG story alone that went up. And we have received just an overwhelming amount of response from our Hulu community, who still falls in line with the disabled members of the LGBTQ+ community, who were saying, thank you for this content. You've inspired me to come out to my family. You've inspired me to have these larger conversations about my identity and who I am with my family. And that's not something you necessarily expect to have when you log onto the Hulu page. You're not ready to have this sort of cathartic experience, but the fact that we were able to have such a wonderful partnership with these prominent members of the community in a way that was in line with our voice, our mission, and our Pride campaign, which is Pride Never Stops, we felt like we were kind of having this wonderful full circle moment of activating fan bases, activating communities through a Hulu lens. And it's finding, when you work for such a large brand, it's finding a way to tap into a community in a way that makes sense. So that way it doesn't feel completely out of left field for your brand to be engaging with this community in an inauthentic way. So the big overarching word that I have is authenticity, even if it's something as small as engaging with Bachelorette fans the night that the show is airing, because you can watch it the next day on Hulu. That's authentic. but also these larger cultural campaigns, reaching out to the LGBTQ+ community, the disabled community, through the lens of our campaign, authentically, genuinely, and having a sense of pride too about the content you're putting out goes a long way. Don't just post something for the sake of posting something for XYZ community. Do it because you believe in it, and do it because you feel like this post will have an impact on that community in so many ways. Those videos weren't just so we could check a box and say, oh yes, we did the pride thing, we did the pride campaign. It's no, I felt very passionate about how I knew this campaign would affect that community, and for us to be able to play a role in that is that's what we do it for. That's what makes all those stressful 2 a.m. calls worth it when in dealing with time differences, when you know that you are able to make a difference in a community through a campaign.
That's so special.
Amount of time.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, Daryl, how about you? I think community from your side of the, from your perspective is very interesting and special and important. So how do you build community online?
Yeah, I'll keep it quick with one key example. And it was one of the first times I had ever run the Judy channel during an actual natural disaster striking. But the Texas storm that caused that tremendous blackout, freezing temperatures, those like icicle fan pictures that you probably remember very vividly. That was a first experience where we were able to respond, provide real-time tips, but also hear from community members. And I think that's something that is so underrated, but so important. It's that people want to reshare tips and send it to people who are affected. So they were sending it to their relatives, their friends, their family in Texas. So we wanted to make sure we were providing that, but we were also fortunate enough to connect with actually a professional organizer in Texas, luckily, who hadn't been affected because she lives on a hospital power grid, but she was sending me all of these stories of people who had reached out to her because she had a substantial following, and being able to share real-time stories, I think, is the most important thing. And also just being interactive. Like, I think there's a more positive light on the 15 minutes of fame concept. I think people genuinely want to share their advice, their survival tips in Judy's case. But really they want to make sure people can like get their own information. And that was something like really powerful to see, and most literally be on the back end of the DM, like when all of those are pouring in, comments and reshares. So that was definitely the most impactful moment for me for community building.
Awesome.